Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking time to come along to the session. Paul Evans, CEO of Mobysoft. I've been drafted in at the last minute. Unfortunately, John, one of the team, is not well, so I'm gonna dive in and hopefully do justice, which is a really important subject and topic that we're discussing right across the social housing sector in terms of the new consumer standards. So, as a really brief introduction for people who don't know who Mobysoft are, we've been actually working in the social housing sector for 21 years next week. We work in two core areas, one around income management, which is about equitable income collection for customers right across the UK. And the second part is delivering technology, data insights, and analytics around repairs and maintenance. So obviously, if anyone wants to have a chat afterwards, many of the team are here as well. So we'd love to have a chat and understand a bit about what your plans are for the future, whether you be an existing partner of Mobysoft's or you're looking to work with us in the future. So in terms of the session itself, the introduction of the new consumer standards by the regulator is really set to transform the landscape of social housing. And that is a dual challenge at both aligning the new service strategies with these new standards, but also to meet the regulator's governance and viability standards. So governance, financial governance, governance itself, and now the consumer standards added with the tenancy satisfaction measures create a big challenge for the sector, and that's what we're going to talk about with the panel today. The discussion will really focus on how landlords are integrating TSMs with new customer service standards to create a unified approach to service delivery. And I know from my perspective, a lot of the conversations I've been having over the last couple of days, people are really trying to grapple with this and understand how they can do the best job possible moving forward. The panel will explore strategic adjustments they need to make, the use of technology, and also broader implications of tenant needs, and ultimately around tenant support and tenant satisfaction. So really looking forward to the session, and obviously we've got a really kind of hugely experienced group of people, so we're really pleased to have them join us today. It'd be great if we could just go around the group and just do an introduction, if it's okay. Ian, if you're all right to just provide a quick introduction.
Hiya, I'm Ian Howarth, I'm Housing Services Director at Sanctuary.
And I'm Jude McCaffrey, Head of Housing at Sohar.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Catherine Fox-Rogers, Johnny Johnson's Managing Director.
Good afternoon. I was going to read out what I was from there, and then I realised I knew that answer already. It's the one I do know this afternoon. So I'm Kerry Theobald. I'm Group Director of Strategic Partnerships and Growth at Futures Housing.
Fantastic, great. So we've got some pre-planned questions, and then towards the end of the session, we've got the Slido. So if you want to scan that, and then if you want to ask any questions, hopefully make them easy, and then we'll cover them towards the end of the session. But feel free, log on, send us a question. I'll have them on the iPad, and I'm sure we'll have enough time to get through them. So to kick off, and apologies for reading these out, but before we address the consumer standards, it would be good to hear about any initiatives that have been introduced that have preceded these standards that have a significant impact on your organisation. So it'd be really good to hear from people on that. Who would like to go first on that?
I don't mind going first on that.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Catherine.
I want to talk about the customer really in all this, and I know you'll probably want to deviate into performance and data and income and all those sorts of things, but it starts at the home, doesn't it, and with the person. And thinking about the TSMs and how we speak with our customers and how we get the best out of the relationship with those customers. We've done an initiative with our involved residents where we do bite-sized assessments on the back of TSMs. So on the back of those quarterly reviews of the scores and the dissection of all that wonderful data, we dig down into that and then we find what are the key messages around that, what are people telling us. And there are some, and we're able to do some bite-sized assessments. And what we've seen from that is some tangible results where we've been able to see incremental increases, and I'm not talking massive amounts, but incremental increases last year. And we do feel as though that's been on the back of being able to listen and act around the service that we deliver. So I think for us that would probably be a good stride in the last 12 months.
Fantastic, yeah. Yourself, Ian?
Yeah, I think from a Sanctuary point of view, there's two things that really have made a difference. One is we've got the North Star, which is something our Chief Customer Officer is really passionate about making sure it's one more satisfied customer. And linked into that is we've started doing these customer focus days, which I think are very close to what Catherine's mentioned. but it's about going out, finding out what really matters to the customer, perhaps that we missed before, so when we weren't interacting quite so closely. And in an area that I look after, which is home ownership, it's been really, really useful, because actually what we've now discovered is that actually homeowners aren't always wanting what we're doing for our other general needs residents. And we're just about to launch a new refocus on home ownership, because our TSM scores are a bit lower for home ownership, like a lot are, and we really want to make sure that we're really focusing in on those things that those customers want.
Yeah, excellent. Really, really useful. Kerry?
We were already on a journey, I think, with customer, but for us, I think it's around making sure that the customer is genuine at the heart of the discussion we're having at board. It's now important, and it shouldn't have been that the consumer regulation and TSMs made that a board discussion rather than how many units we were building and what our repairs performance was. So I think first and foremost, it's everybody's considering the customer at the heart of when we make our service design and transformation. Secondly, it's about truly understanding what are your results telling you and what's driving it. So we're trying to do some work now. You may have seen a few other organisations doing it around psychographic segmentation to truly understand the needs of our customers that's going to drive those scores, because whilst we get the scores, it doesn't always tell you what's driving it. So that in true engagement with your customers to try and understand how you turn that dial has been, I think that's going to be a real step change for us. So rather than doing more of what we've done in the past, truly understanding what it means to you and to you and to you, what we need to do to engage and change and turn that dial. So I think just putting them at the heart of every conversation is probably the biggest change that we've had. So that's a cultural shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Ian?
Jude, at Soho, we've always had a pretty strong emphasis on resident involvement. 4 of our board members are our tenants, so there are tenants at every level throughout Soho. So I think for a long time we've always thought we were doing a pretty good job in offering services that residents want. And what's been really interesting about both the TSMs and the consumer standards is getting that snapshot from the TSMs on how we're doing and seeing disparities when we look at things like our EDI data. So one thing we really noticed was that we had a big disparity in repair satisfaction between men and women, about a 20-point difference, which we just didn't know before. So that was something that came straight out of our TSMs and our EDI data. And we've been able to then work on that, speak to our contractors, and that's now been levelled out, which is fantastic. But this is new knowledge that's come from the TSM process.
Yeah, brilliant. No, really, really helpful. In terms of the next question, just moving on then, so how will the new consumer standards impact the overall tenant experience within social housing? And what adjustments are you making to ensure alignment to these standards? So Ian, am I okay to kick off with yourself?
I think one of the things that the consumer standard, and I'll pick on a particular part of it because I'm sure everybody else will have a lot better answers than me, but one of the things that I picked out is this really need to drive forward. We've got a lot of residents where we're not the freeholder and that there's other organisations providing services. And I think what we've probably done in the past is said, well, that's their responsibility, you do it. And we've got residents in there. So one of the things I think that we're going to do a lot more of is really holding those organisations to account. We've got some specialists to do that now. And I really think that's going to make a real difference to quite a lot of our residents who probably felt quite second class at one point. And I really worried about that. And before I used to work at Swan, we started that process off. And actually, it's interesting that those companies, once they know that you're going to hold them to account, do start to up their game. So it's about us upping our game and them upping their game.
Yeah, brilliant. Catherine?
Yeah, I think, Johnny Johnson's strapline, specialising in housing for older people. I think this year we've done a lot of work around digital. We've done a lot of work understanding the analog to digital switch. Predominantly our homes are independent living schemes, and there is a lot of change. There's a lot of change across asset management functions as well. And the changes have really affected how we put things in a digital manner and how we train those out. So we've done a lot of work around that. So I think digital has been quite a key thing in the last 12 months for us, and getting people to understand that. and how that shift, because when we talk about channel shift and you talk about differences in how you transact with people, I think it's really important that you see the end user in that.
Yeah.
So I think I'd say in the last 12 months, but probably in the 18 months, our operating structures have reflected that. And like Ian's just said, the people that are delivering those services to the front end have really changed in the way that they transact with the people. And digital's been a big key piece of that work.
Yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot. Have you got maybe an example you could share with us at all, Catherine?
Well, I mean, it's not revolutionary. I'm not going to sit here and say we've broken ground with this, but I think for the past 3 years, we've been putting digital notice boards in independent living schemes, and they've been a real starting base for people who haven't or don't use a digital device. So it's basically a big iPad. It's not an iPad. I'm not plugging Apple here. But starting that off and being able to transact with people in that way and push messages through that way, that's not changing the resource element of those people, but actually when we talk about being able to deliver data on the back of building safety regulator or whatever that means, you've actually got to train people to understand how to use those pieces of kit. And when you've got older people, and again, I'm not waxing lyrical about, my mum's 80 and she has an iPad and she can quite easily get deliveries from Marks and Spencer's, who knew? But there's plenty of people who can't and still don't, and I think we've always got to remember the end user in what we're doing, so we've done a lot of work around that. I think that's the difference with us in the last probably 12 or 18 months.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know my own dad, he will not use any tech. He wants to pick the phone up and speak to someone. So you've got to find that kind of requirement based on the individual preference and not treat everyone the same. It's really important to do that, isn't it? Absolutely. Jude?
Yeah, I think the biggest change for Sohar over the last year or so has come out of sort of scrutiny group work. We've been looking at our repair service, as I've just been saying, and actually we made the decision to bring our repair service in-house, which is something Sohar's never done before. We've always contracted out, but we're actually bringing our repair service in-house now because what we'll wish to do is be able to exert the culture of Sohar onto our repair service and have that really sort of thread through, which at the moment we don't feel we always get. And that's something that residents have been telling us really strongly for probably a little while actually. And so, this isn't something that we can enter into without spending some money. We have to, but it's something that residents are really keen for us to do. And through those scrutiny groups and working with involved residents, that's the sort of decision we're making.
Absolutely.
Two things for me really. I think our greatest resource in the sector, but certainly at Futures, is our people.
Yeah.
But our people are not spending time with our customers. They're too busy filling out admin stuff and we're not giving them the tools. So we're recruiting more people to work face to face with customers because there's a cohort of our customers that have said that's what they want.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do then is make sure we put that alongside real digital solutions that make their job easier. You wouldn't think about sending an electrician out or a plumber out without the tools to do the job. And yet we ask our customer-facing staff that are dealing with housing management issues to deal with multiple systems on devices that are no good for your thumbs and fingers, and you can't see anything when it's, and the signal doesn't work because you're in the deepest, darkest Derbyshire. So it's about making sure that you've got a digital and technological hub that empower your staff to do the things that they're good at, which is actually have meaningful conversations and create individual solutions to customers' issues, because that's what the regulation is saying. It's saying don't just whitewash everybody with the same thing. It's treat customers as individuals and look at how you can flex your service around that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We see that a lot in our kind of repair side of things. The people who go out and address these challenges and these jobs, they want to go out and deliver a really high quality service, and they want to make sure that the tenant, the customer, gets a really good experience. So yeah, absolutely couldn't agree more. Yeah. So moving on, how do you think these measures will coincide with TSMs, and have you any learnings from the TSMs that will apply to these new standards? So Jude, okay to kick off?
Yeah, well, I think the TSMs are very good, aren't they, at giving a snapshot of where you are, sort of quarter by quarter. That's how we do ours. So quarter by quarter, we get a really good snapshot of sort of where satisfaction is, how that's moving. The consumer standards build on that. So the TSMs really well feed into the consumer standards and help us then have those discussions with residents and put residents at the centre of decisions so that we can sort of work on improving the sort of the areas and the services that we need to. I think what's really important, Kerry made a point a moment ago about staff, and it's really important to put staff at the centre of this as well as residents, because our frontline staff often have the knowledge, I think, of where a service is going really well or where a service could be improved upon. And actually by working with them as well as our residents, you can often really sort of improve on those services.
Absolutely, yeah. Catherine?
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, you look at what is the financial cost of improving your TSM score by 2%, 4%, 6%. You look at TSMs, I don't think they're ever designed to be in the 90%. I don't think that's really what they're designed to do. They're designed to actually start a different conversation with your customers. We've got, I'm using the royal we here, so people, I'm sure it's not groundbreaking news, use that word again, that Johnny Johnson are just about to merge into Sanctuary Housing Group. And Ian spoke briefly about Lizzie, who's the Chief Customer Officer at Sanctuary. And the target this year is to try and increase the TSM by around 3 to 5% by doing some bog standard work around listening to customers and understanding need and directing resources in a place that's needed. And I think there is that sometimes reluctance, but actually understanding that just doing some more basic things and getting those things right is what customers actually want. Yeah. Because when you look at your complaints data, and we all do on a probably not a daily basis, but let's say weekly or even monthly basis, repairs is predominantly at the heart of that, isn't it? So customers want their repairs delivered quicker. Unfortunately, we only have £5,000 per unit to spend on each home per year, and slicing that up and making that real is difficult. Yeah, so I think doing the basics right, doing what you can with your staff, the professionalism of the CIH work is fantastic. I think, going back to basics around that, making people have that real understanding of the importance of customers and data, and making sure that people have got the skills to do the job, both professionally and through having the right tools such as computers and everything else that goes with that, can only be a great thing in terms of making our sector have that real buzz about it again. Yeah, because that's what we want, don't we? I don't meet anybody really, and I don't see anybody here who really wants to do a bad job. Everybody wants to do a really, really good job. And I think it's about us from a strategic level and leaders out there really championing that. Absolutely. And turning the dial.
Yeah, absolutely. Kerry?
Well, I think one thing I've noticed through the TSMs are when you can correlate the data with customers that have actually experienced a service and an interaction with you as a customer, you get pretty good scores, good results. But obviously it's around perception, and where you're not interacting with those customers on a regular basis, you've got to look at what's driving those things. And for me, it's about how we can positively understand the experience that customers are having of us as an organisation and be able to make those changes. How do we create more positive contact? And who are we not hearing from? I'm more interested in the fact that we've probably got 10% of our customers that are multiple mental and physical disabilities, and we are not hearing from them. And I'm absolutely certain that we're not creating a service that from a TSM perspective we could be proud of. And it's how do we create a truly inclusive service around that. So I think it's getting under the skin of that data in the TSMs, and then embedding that within, I guess we've all got action plans of how we create the gap analysis on our consumer standards. We're probably doing better than we all give ourselves credit for. We're probably all around that C2 mark, but there's work to do, and it's that work to do that takes you from good or medium average to being really great, and that customer experience coming along with it.
Absolutely, yeah. Ian?
I agree with everything that's been said. But what I would say, I think one of the things, I think TSMs were a bit of a wake-up call as well, perhaps to that unheard group that Kerry mentions, and I think there's going to be a real trick to get those people that are sat there, that are just in their homes, and perhaps like a lot of people don't want to interact with us, apart from they want the repair done straight away. And I think what we've got to do is I think a real sort of challenge for Sanctuaries as a national housing association is deciding what we do, because not what one set of residents won't equal what another set of residents will be. So, I was down, I can go to Ipswich one day and I can be in Chester the next day, and there's different needs for that. And I think that's what the TSMs have taught us as well, is that we need to reach out to that silent group and work out what they want, but then we've got to bring them with us, or else we won't drive up satisfaction. What we'll do is, there's no point satisfying 100 people. That's not going to make a difference to our TSMs, but we need to find a way of interacting with that greater majority of residents that are there. They're paying the rent out. They should expect a service that reflects their needs as well.
Absolutely. It's also broader about, in terms of the areas that we're working on. We know that our TSM scores in the summer are better than the middle of winter. So that's about people's feelings. And so that's not about the experience they had about a repair or a complaint. It's the place they live. It's much broader than that. It's how safe they feel. And you start to look broader than your direct services to create that sense of, I live here and I'm enjoying living here.
Yeah.
Because summer, we all feel a little bit happier. We're all happy that the sun's shining. It's a bit warm under the jacket. But how do we make sure that we get that consistency throughout the year of understanding that we're fixing the right things?
Yeah, absolutely. And just picking up a couple of points, we use it a lot in our own business. And I think you made the comment a couple of times, Catherine. I love that term, brilliant basics, because I think that's something that the sector sometimes forgets about because they're always trying to do the best job for the customer. And sometimes, it's all about delivering them brilliant basics. I think the second thing, I couldn't agree more. One of the reasons why I joined the sector, I met Lizzie just prior to Christmas, and she was talking about her kind of journey into social housing. And it's about the fact that everyone in the sector is totally focused on doing the best possible job they can for customers. And that's why I think the sector is completely unique. So really, really great information and great insight. So it wouldn't be a Mobysoft hosted session if we didn't have a question about data and analytics, so I'll get onto that. So what role do you see data analytics playing in optimizing service delivery and performance evaluation within the context of the new customer service standards? So Kerry, if it's okay to pick that one up.
That sounded like a really long question that I'm not sure I know the answer to. I'll share something with you. We use Rent Sense as a product at Futures. And we had our lowest arrears level ever reported this year. And that was great for board, and we all liked that. But I was at our Insight Committee last week. And the reality of that is that our involved customers were saying, we feel safe.
Absolutely.
Because I've got information and I know where I am with my rent. I'm getting the right conversations because we're having interventions with the customers at a point way before it gets to crisis. And the technology and the systems that we use to be able to do that drives business performance. But we've got more customers paying it. We've got more credit than we've got people in arrears now, because people utilise that advice and support to. In fact, one guy, I think, even said it was a savings scheme. He puts money in there, he overpays, and he knows he can bring it out whenever he wants to. And that's through technology and people working hand in glove to give them that sense. So I don't know whether that answered the question, but I think that for me really landed well in that our technology is supporting our customers in a way that makes them feel comfortable and safe, and that's really important to them.
Absolutely. Catherine?
I'm going to up you. I'm going to up you there. We use Rent Sense as well. This isn't a plug, by the way. We've used them for a while. We didn't evict anybody last year, and we are insanely proud of that, because I think that's what the world should be about, isn't it? Keeping people. Not to say that you sometimes have to go through that process. I'm not saying that everybody can do that. But I think, just to turn back to stats, so our stat is that 80% of people feel safe in the home, and that's incredibly important. We're proud of that as well, and we want to keep that. And when you're an older person living in a property, safety and security, and whether it's sons and daughters, mums and dads, usually when you move into an independent living scheme, safety and security is really up there of what you want. From an arrears process, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's great to have low arrears, but it's the quality conversations that go with that. And we have that money advice team. We invest in that. We know it's an investment, but the investment is by having that peripheral service that sits around your traditional income management collection, means that those softer conversations and those conversations that mean that you can move people around your homes, people do have the opportunity to have conversations around additional income, I think are still so very, very important.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a cost, But when you look at the cost of eviction, or you look at the cost of keeping somebody in a 3-bedroomed home, when really they should be looking at their moving journey into a different type of accommodation, those people are really key in enabling those conversations to happen with customers at the right point in their housing journey. So I think that's where our skill sets lie at the minute.
Absolutely. Jude?
Yeah, I think data is essential in driving good business and good decisions. I think about the way we sort of manage our allocations at Soha, and sort of something we looked at over the last 4 years. We've had COVID, we've had lockdown. We also use rent sense, by the way. We haven't been told to say that, but
we got a free water.
Yeah, we did get free water.
This is about it.
The tattoo as well.
But so looking at that journey of new tenants coming through, often coming through a council nomination process, and then coming to Soha. We wanted to bring people in and see those tenancies succeed, and have people having successful tenancies. And so using data, we've been able to and working with Mobysoft, been able to predict which tenancies are going to need more support up front, which tenancies are going to need to be referred straight into one of our named tenancy sustainment officers so that they get that help. And actually it's really helped similarly with bringing down our eviction rate, and just having those successful tenancies where people feel happy in their home and feel like it's somewhere that they want to put down roots and stay. Because I think something that's also really important when we're looking at TSMs is that idea of sort of tenant retention. The longer tenants stay in our homes, we see the generally more satisfied they are. Conversely, we see the kind of areas we're managing where tenancies change quite quickly. We often get quite low satisfaction. So where you can get tenants to stay and use data to help you do that, I think that actually drives up those TSM satisfaction levels as well.
Absolutely. Ian?
I think moving away from the fact that we also used to use rent sense at Swan, so that I'll get my tattoo later. I got that
We're both working on Sanctuary.
Yeah,
at the
we're
minute,
both
aren't
working
we?
on Sanctuary now. So I think taking away from that though, Catherine mentioned, a big point for us is we have a £5,000 per property per year, and using that isn't a lot of money. When you knock out probably a couple of properties, a lot of properties need a couple of jobs, a couple of orders. There's not a lot left, and I think using data to target what would keep residents in their homes. So possibly sort of making sure we give that support when somebody needs a disabled adaptation, so they don't have to move out. Moving somebody, moving if you can. Even help somebody do a 4-way mutual exchange, because the reality is on the waiting list they've got 24 years for their 3-bed house, whereas actually we've had some really successful working together and using our data and saying, well, that person there needs to move to there, but that person there needs to move to there. So I think technology really helps that, because you can be overwhelmed really quickly. We could spend that few £1,000s 5 times over to make very little difference. But if you can target it, you can make a big difference to a lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I just want to pick a couple of points. I think, again, brilliant insight and hugely valuable. I think one of the things that we talk about in the business is we see tech as the enabler. What I think the sector needs tech companies to be held accountable is to outcomes. Because it's not about the tech, it's about actually mitigating risk and actually allowing people to live a really high quality life in a really safe home, and that's what we really focus on in the business. And I think a lot of people don't potentially see the impact on someone. So what we really talk about, it's not about arrears management, it's more about mitigation of risk. That's our mindset in our business, which is all, we know people want to stay in a safe home. They're prioritising it over other things with the cost of living crisis, but it's about being in that home, being in that safe home, and not having the fear of debt and all them other issues and risks around them. So great insight as always. Moving on, considering the broader implications of how you envision the evolution of social housing services in the coming years, especially in terms of tenant empowerment and community engagement. So how do you see them broader implications based on them factors? Ian, put you on the spot.
I think what I see is residents' voice coming back, and I've worked in housing 30 odd years now, because I started working when I was 2. So that's obviously the thing,
Wow.
But what I would say is that it's gone in peaks and troughs. A few years ago, we had residents where we all had residents on our boards. We all had residents. We did a bit of a tick box exercise, and I don't really think it made any difference, because the reality is those residents on the boards were not often reflective. I think that has changed, and I think what we're seeing now is that customer element being part of every strategic decision, and I think that is the really important thing, because the customer voice is important, and the reason it's more important is that we're in a sector that's not like a shop. Absolutely. It's not there's not really that much choice. You can't choose your landlord that easily. I know you can move, but you can't choose your landlord. And so what we have to do is protect and make sure that we're keeping these homes in trust, and that we're working for them, and that we are not putting what my perception of a good service is onto what our residents think is a perception of a good service. And I think that's the sort of like the real thing, and I think that will grow from strength to strength. And you see like our resident advisory panels making a real difference. I mean, I mentioned we're looking at home ownership and home ownership services. That's being driven from our resident advisory panels, who are saying, listen, you provide all this stuff, it's great, but that's just not what we want. We want something a bit different. And I think that's the way I see it going forward.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's also bringing that to life a little bit for your boards.
Yeah.
Because we all get so much information and so much data, and it tells us something, but I don't think it makes that emotional connection in a way that our customer-facing staff, on every, when they're in front of a customer, they understand that impact. I don't think our boards necessarily always do. I think sometimes as exec, you're looking at the numbers, you're looking in the wrong places. We've done some work really to take the qualitative data, and we've done a lot around customer stories. So we've interviewed customers, and we've brought that to our board, and we've brought some really challenging stories to our board to bring it to life around domestic abuse and the impacts of that, the impacts of repairs, the impacts of ASB, hate crime. Let me tell you, those board meetings are very different after they've listened to that story from a customer. And you can't argue that. You can't argue a business case. It's a customer telling you their experience of living in one of our homes. So I think bringing that to life and looking at the data, and then really being tenacious in driving those improvements through is really important.
Absolutely. Catherine?
I'd like to see more diversity. I'd like to see more diversity in the sector, both from colleagues. I'd like to see more diversity in the sector from how we build out properties, and we're really challenging ourselves on diversity in that piece. We've got an LGBTQ plus scheme that's nearly finished in Manchester. It took 7 years to build out. I think there's a lot there for us to get into, and it goes back to the data, and it goes back to making services representative of the people. And if you mix in some really strong apprentice schemes as well, I think that would really hold the sector in good shape for the future. But I think we should really embrace that diversity piece, really embrace it, because you have to be reflective of the people that you serve.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm not saying we're not, I'm just saying we should really be reflective of that and really push as that as leaders.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with Kerry. It's something we've done for a while around the board meetings and having the customer at the heart of that. We've done it for a while, and when you read them, even as a colleague, but when you read it as a board member, it really brings it to life, having that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jude?
Yeah, I think we've said this a few times, haven't we? But I think putting residents at the centre of the decision-making process is essential. And when you do that, when residents are in that position, they're telling us that they want us to do the basics brilliantly. We want those great services. By talking to residents, one thing sort of springs to my mind straight away is talking to a residents group. They were telling us about an increase in homelessness and rough sleeping they'd seen in South Oxfordshire, which is not an area you traditionally associate with rough sleeping, but it's very rural. But we were certainly seeing some rough sleeping around South Oxfordshire, and residents were really concerned about this and about what we could do to be part of a solution to this. I think we'd always thought that's sort of the council's job. They will send us nominations of people, but they're often very hard to reach and very excluded, and often not on the housing register. So by speaking to our local authorities, we were able to set up a Housing First project, which helped an initial 6. It's moved now to bigger numbers, but those initial 6 people who came through, it was a new project for Sohar, a new venture for Sohar. But the reason I'm saying that is that's something that came from our residents. Our residents raised that as a local issue that needed resolving, and so really powerful.
Absolutely, yeah. No, really good. Conscious of time, this is a long question, so you'll have to bear with me. So, arguably in the past, financial metrics often too precedented as a primary objective for many social landlords. With the shift towards prioritising customer standards, do you anticipate the financial metrics will receive less emphasis? And how do you see this shift of impacting overall strategic priorities and decision-making processes within social housing organisations?
There's a really simple answer to that.
Yeah, no.
No? Because you can't deliver what customers want without any money and resources.
No.
So unless you're a well-governed, financially secure organisation, you can't possibly expect to continue to deliver the services, or you'll be here today spending all of money, and tomorrow they won't have that, and something else will go. So absolutely not. I just think it's been a long time coming that the customer sits alongside both governance and financials in terms of the things that organisations need to prioritise. So how they don't all sit hand in glove, I don't know.
Absolutely. Catherine?
Completely agree. We face the biggest financial challenge and the biggest ask of ourselves as a business, and made the bold decision, and incredibly proud of that, to be able to say that Johnny Johnson couldn't stack up for the next 30 years. So as a custodian of those homes, we chose to seek a partnership to be able to make those stand up for the next 30 years, and that's difficult. It's a difficult decision, but you have to be financially viable. That is the number one thing that you've got to do. And you've heard us talk about it a couple of times today, the golden £5,000 that each home brings in. And that is the reality of it, you might have a little bit of difference across the country, the best word in the world, affordable rents, which are more than social rents. So, but apart from that, you've not got a lot of money to play with. And then when you put on top of that as well, the rising cost of service charges, you really have to be careful in terms of how you deliver those services. So I think it's great for the sector that we have got a new way of working, a new way of operating, and it makes it fresh. And for those of us who are probably a little bit, not as young as Ian, plainly, who's been in the sector since he was 2, but I think, we should embrace the change. We should embrace the challenge to make ourselves better, to make ourselves, to everybody, most people who I speak to, most senior people, what do you want? I want to be the best landlord. Great, brilliant. Everybody's got the same. If everybody's got that drive and that aspiration, that can only be great news for customers, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Jude?
I can only agree. I mean, it's a balancing act, but ultimately the financial metrics and viability are always going to remain absolutely essential. I think how we go about balancing that is, we've talked about that cost per property metric and how we watch that so closely, and it's just about how we can deliver sort of excellent services and constantly improving services without increasing that cost per property. And that we do through some of the things I suppose we've talked about, like using data for prediction, just thinking about how we can make sure services are really relevant to the people who are receiving them. But yeah, absolutely. I can't see the financial regulation side becoming any less important at all.
Absolutely. And Ian?
Well, I think the answer, definitely from somebody that worked at Swan, is yes. You've got to keep an eye on the financials, or else you end up not being able to improve it. I think I agree with everything that's said. I think the one thing that we might have to do a bit more of as a sector is have a bit more of those honest conversations with our residents as well, because I think there is sometimes a perception that there's this massive amounts of money. Housing associations, Sanctuary makes, has a big turnover. It's got a lot of money. It's got the numbers look big in the sense of what income it's got coming in, but actually the reality is as well as the numbers being big it's got coming in, it's got a lot of numbers coming out as well. So I think what I'd say is I think it is welcomed that customer is up there with finance, but it can't displace finance, or else we're on a journey to there being nobody here in 10, 15, 20 years time, because we've all just gone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think some of the discussions I have with industry bodies and CEOs and execs as well, I think some people in government, for example, will look at them headline numbers and think, wow, big amounts of money. But you've got to realise that, social housing is supporting communities right across the UK, small, medium and large, and therefore them big numbers are representative of them organisations, but not of the challenge the sector faces every day across the whole of the UK based on that particular demographic or regional variance. So could not agree more, Ian. Absolutely. So fantastic information, great insight. I'm just going to check on the Slido to see if there's any questions. Okay, we've got a couple of questions anonymous. So first and foremost, do we think tenants want anything different than what they have always wanted? What does the panel think has taken consumer regs to focus boards and executive directors? So Jude?
Well, yeah, I mean, what tenants want is a safe, affordable home, a good quality home, and great services. And you want to look out the window and see the grass has been cut. You want to get on well with your neighbours. So I don't think that's necessarily changing as such, but there are those other pressures that we've been talking about on landlords and on how we can continue to deliver and continue to improve on our services in a time when there isn't a huge amount of money around, and how we deliver that, how we might do that through digital means, through increasing use of apps and so on, but also having a view that some people will be digitally excluded, and just might not be able to or might not choose to use the internet or apps. So I think there's a sort of a decision to make there about how we deliver services to really effectively to those residents.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Catherine?
Yeah, just a little different tack here. I think if we think of the ageing well agenda and the fact that we are all getting older, even Ian.
No.
But we're aging in place as well, and being, specialist in housing for older people, looking at data and looking across your homes, what you'll actually find is you've got a very high number of people that are what you would class as older people living in your general needs accommodation. So I think it goes back to, yes, we can talk about the insane appetite in this country and the drive for home ownership, but we need a plan for housing and we need to build more homes. And if we can build more homes, and I am a big fan of building homes for older people as well, because I think that will release a lot more in terms of family homes. But I think we need a plan for housing. We need a national plan for housing, and it needs to be more than 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. And if you look at Manchester as an absolute fantastic example, being born and bred here, I can tell you this city did not look like this 25 years ago, and this is born out of a strategic plan and actually a delivered plan, and people actually taking it forward over 2 decades. And I think that's what we have to look at, not only for the tenants who are in our homes now, but for all those people who are on the waiting list, for all those people who have got aspirations to live in a safe and affordable home. And I think that's what we need to be thinking of, not only for when us four are probably not on this stage, and many of you taken our places, but we need more homes and we need more sustainable tenancies for the people of England and the UK.
Absolutely, yeah. Kerry?
Well, the back end of the question was whether the tier, having a C grading, we had to wait for that. I don't think as a sector we have. I do think we've got, tens of thousands of people that are focused on customer, but what measures gets done, and regrettably, I think this is a necessary step to make sure that it's elevated alongside financial and governance. So I think it formalises what a lot of people are doing and gives it the focus it needs. Should it have been necessary? Probably not. But from a more positive perspective, I do think now the sector is talking. No one's talking about how many you're developing and how many units. It's about customers at every conversation. So I think that's a really positive thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Ian, did you want to add anything?
I think the thing that I see and perceive is that the world has changed. Our residents have noticed and have seen that austerity and other government cuts have meant that the services that they've been relying on have disappeared. And I think what we've got is we've got a lot more questioning resident panel now. I mean, I was having to talk about this to my mum a few days ago, and she was like, I don't think she completely gets what I do for a living, but she was like saying, everybody must love you, and I was like, well, that's not the case. And actually, it's great that doesn't happen anymore. I think we've got a lot more people looking at us and saying, what are we doing well and what we're not doing well. And I think I completely agree. We need to build more homes. We need to have a plan. And I think we need to stop treating residents like they don't understand that. Yeah. Because actually, I think residents I think our customers, our future customers completely understand. We can't turn it around in a year. This is a 15, 25 year. We know how long it takes us to do things. So I just think that's the thing. And I agree. I don't think boards have needed TSMs and consumer standards. But what I think they have done is I think they've focused perhaps a few minds, and perhaps, yeah, it is right, 10 years ago, everybody would be going, oh, you're developing so many, aren't you? And that is a really good thing that we've changed away from that.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we haven't unfortunately got enough time for the other questions because I need to wrap up, I've been told. But I think, from our perspective, from my perspective, brilliant insight, obviously a huge amount of experience here at the panel, which I think everyone will benefit from listening. I know obviously you'll be around after the session, so if people want to catch up with any of the panelists, then I'm sure they'll have a little bit of time to catch up. But from my perspective and the team at Mobysoft perspective, we just want to thank everyone who's attended this afternoon, but a big thank you to the panelists. So if I could just ask everyone to give them a round of applause. Thank you.